Hi folks, welcome back to another episode of Woo Says. This is where we get real about the US and China and everywhere and everything in between. It's two superpowers but one global story. Now, joining me as always is Professor Emeritus Datuk Woo Wing Thye, and we are talking about the ASEAN Summit because, of course, that's the biggest story in town. It carried the theme of inclusivity and sustainability. That's two big words that sound really good in communiques, but today on the show we want to explore what they mean in practice. So this is actually the first of a two-part mini-series on the ASEAN Summit, and in this episode we will unpack inclusivity first. So what does inclusivity mean for a bloc like ASEAN in this moment of history? And what are the limits of that inclusivity when interests collide? So, Professor Woo, let's start there. Let's start big about what inclusivity means for ASEAN in the ASEAN context, because this ASEAN Summit, we welcomed a new member in ASEAN, our 11th country member, Timor-Leste. So when you think about that context of inclusivity, what does it speak to you with the inclusion, the expansion of the bloc?
I think inclusivity is a word that includes the following features. Mm-hmm. The first feature is we got to have peace before we can do anything else.
Okay.
And the second part of inclusivity would be the peace is underpinned by mutual benefit. And the third part is that we want to stress ASEAN centrality, but centrality not in the sense of setting the agenda. The centrality in the sense that we want to be in the center of two powers without being a clear member of any one of them. In other words, think of two spheres of influence, and we are the buffer zone between the two spheres of influence. That's what centrality means. But that's a definition of we are able to occupy a buffer zone between two big powers. It's actually a very hard act. It's almost like standing in the middle of the road and you get run over by both sides, traffic from both sides.
Oh dear.
That is the danger of centrality.
Yes.
Okay. But let's first talk about the peace part. Well, Donald Trump, thanks to Donald Trump's eagerness for the Nobel Peace Prize, he certainly helped the ASEAN chair Malaysia to bring about peace in the Thai Cambodian clash. The fact that the US is a strong strategic and economic player for both Cambodia and Thailand, it helped Malaysia tremendously. They was willing to leverage that power to get them to be more receptive to what Prime Minister Anwar was proposing.
Okay. So I'm just going to interrupt you very quickly. When you say leverage that power, what do you mean by that?
Well, you must understand that the border dispute was sparked off by the issue of scam operations on the Cambodian side of the Thai border. And the Thais, under pressure from the Chinese, because the scam operations were run by Chinese gangs who had fled China to Cambodia, and they were scamming mostly Chinese in the mainland. So there's one thing that China definitely wants is you close these scam operations and you stop funding the criminal elements of China. So Thailand shut off electricity flow. And without electricity flow, you cannot have internet. And if you cannot have internet, you cannot do long distance scamming. So we have the situation that some Western interests got provoked existing tensions because Thailand and Cambodia has tensions over the border already. Like there was a dispute over a historical temple on who has ownership of the temple. It's almost like in Jerusalem, you have the temple on the mount. One part is Muslim, one part is Christianity. So there are areas of dispute. And so once under provocation from the scammers, the tension broke out. And the US, being a strategic partner of Thailand especially, and actually also a strong friend of Cambodia. Prime Minister Manet is a graduate of West Point, USA.
Oh.
So he was trained by the US military. So there is at least emotional ties, at least ties of friendship and so forth.
I didn't know that.
And the inevitable outcome was the US economic pressure, and I'm sure the Chinese brought pressure on both sides too. So with the two backseat drivers, Anwar was the front driver of the vehicle of peace. The important thing is, this was certainly a big gesture which persuaded Donald Trump to come here, the grandstanding of a peacemaker, signing. After all, he had Gaza behind him. Yes, the peace has held so far.
Yes.
And now he has got another notch on his belt. Now, what that really is important is, while here, he also has to bring something for Malaysia, and we signed the trade treaty, which basically set up in very specific terms that the United States will not impose tariffs higher than 19%. That means that we can bargain for other items later on to be lower.
Okay.
That is the important word, not higher than 19%. That is certainly very positive. And at the same time, possibly for playing ball, Thailand too signed a trade treaty with Trump. And that also limited almost the same terms as us. We no higher than 19%. And what you see is the immediate reaction of the market is that the US dollar ringgit rate has improved for the ringgit. Although not massively, we went from 4.22 to 4.20.
Trending up.
Certainly
Strengthening.
a favorable direction.
A favorable direction.
Favorable direction. That's right. And but that is a part that is potentially dangerous in the trade treaty. A danger and an opportunity.
Okay.
The trade treaty talks about, it applies to goods of Malaysian origin. What do you mean by goods of Malaysian origin? It clearly cannot be goods that is imported from China and immediately reshipped from Malaysia. It is in no sense, credible sense, that it is a Malaysian product. So then the question is, what if the product came here and was semi-finished, and we put our artistic touches to it and put in some advanced technological components in it, and then we ship it off to China? Well, the question is, what is the percent of value added that is Malaysian in origin and Chinese in origin? So the whole thing of local content has been, what's the percentage of foreign inputs in your exports?
Right.
That number has not been specified, because let's face it, if we export coffee makers to the United States, there will have to be a chip inside not a high level chip, but there will be a computer chip inside the coffee maker. And cheapest producer of that kind of chip is China. So clearly, to maximize profits, we should source from the lowest producers. Now, the question is, what will the Chinese chip comprise of the value of the product? If it is 10%, then that is a very high, 10% means a very high bar for us. That means that 90% has been Malaysian. And that has yet to be specified.
Okay.
The other thing that is definitely coming is they might ask, within the product you export to us, what is the source of that technology? Even though the material components are Malaysian in origin, made by Malaysian SMEs, for example, is the technology from Huawei? Like, for example, if that is a condition, that they would not let us use Huawei chips, even though they are the cheapest, then there's a restriction. The definition of local content has gone from material, the origin of the material itself, to now origin of the technology itself.
Wow.
That is the second step. The third step would be, well, we like to know the ownership of the firms that exported the products.
Which is very pertinent for Malaysia.
And yes, he said, and how many, and we want that to be maximum X% of shareholders from China. You would say, how could the Americans possibly know? Because the Chinese investor will be hiding behind various identities.
Yeah.
You know, they'll set up a Hong Kong subsidiary, the Hong Kong subsidiary then invest in Malaysia, or they set up a firm in Thailand, and the Thai firm invests in Malaysia. So that's a big mess, and it's way beyond the ability of the Americans to enforce something like that, which means they haven't figured out how to enforce it.
Yes. Okay.
So what is likely to happen after they have put restrictions on the source of your material inputs, source of your technology that you use? They would say, let's say 100 Malaysian firms export product X to Malaysia, and it meets the criteria of material input being mostly from Malaysia, technology, very little small component from China, then it's supposed to ownership restrictions come up. How would the Americans figure it out? The clever way to figure it out is, since 100 Malaysian firms are exporting, you say, you pick arbitrarily 50% of them and say, you guys are clearly Chinese owned. Prove that you are not. So the hard work of verifying ownership is pushed to the firms. So after these 50 firms have proved that only a very small part of the ownership, if at all, is from China, then you approve those, and then now you turn to the other 50 and say, you are the guys who are Chinese owned. Then you get the goods from the first 50 you had banned, and the other 50 will now have to scramble to show their ownership and so forth. That would be a mess. And that would certainly hurt Malaysia as a production base.
Yes, I mean the cost to businesses.
Yes,
for sure.
and so the question is, how can we get bargaining power so that the bar that is set is not so strict,
Yes.
that it forces us to decouple from China? Because if we chose to decouple from China in terms of using their inputs, the Chinese would definitely retaliate and not let us export to the China market. And that is a market that's just as important to us as the American market, right? So the question is, if you are good, I anticipate unless the Cold War cools down considerably, there'll be this escalation of rules of origin requirements in the treaty that we have signed, because the treaty has just left undefined the rules of origin.
Okay, so before we move any further, could I just get you to elaborate a little bit about the enforcement part? This trade deal is a legally binding document,
Yes.
essentially. So after signing, Malaysia will have to ratify and ensure that all the rules are complied with. If we fail to do that, and if enforcement is going to be an issue with it, does that mean that 90% tariff rate is
The 19%?
tariff rate could be higher?
Yes. Yes, because basically the 19% is set in stone if you sign the treaty,
Okay.
and it is deemed as in force for both of us.
Okay.
What is not stated there is the weak part was, what's the definition of Malaysian origin?
Yes. Okay.
So that is the part. Now, how can we get a bargaining power on what is Malaysian origin? Bargaining power specifically, we want the components that we can, imported components we put inside, we want to get it from the cheapest producer, right? So we want that to be pretty high as possible. Similarly, the technology. We want a free hand to pick the technology that is most suited for the product.
Absolutely.
And the ownership, we welcome American investors, we welcome Chinese investors. That's what centrality means. We stand in the middle of the road, but now how do we avoid being knocked down by both sides, right? Because if we have very strict, if we choose to decouple our production from Chinese inputs, technology, and ownership, then basically we send a signal we are standing on one side of the road rather than the center of the road. Now we'll be run over by the Chinese style.
Well, for sure would be run over by one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. So how can we have this bargaining power?
Right.
And there you can see it in the fact that present at the summit was also Brazil. Brazil came for the first time.
Right.
South Africa came for the first time. And in the room are also the high government official from India. And we have the Prime Minister of China and a high official from Russia.
You're
So
naming all the BRICS countries.
are also in the room.
Right.
In the past, the Russians have been there, the Indians have always been there, of course the Chinese have always been there. But now B and S have shown up. Well, not the BS you're thinking of, but Brazil and South Africa.
I'm glad you clarified.
And the BS. So the complete BRICS is there. And this is a big signal that we want to be friends with Donald Trump. When he wants to help us make peace in Thailand and Cambodia, we work with him.
Yeah.
And then we want continued access to the US market. We welcome American technological firms to come invest in Penang,
Yeah.
to upgrade the semiconductor production. We want all of that. But we also welcome
Okay.
them, not only just from China, but from the rest of BRICS.
So, Prof, you're saying that the way Malaysia handled the bargaining power leverage was to bring BRICS into the room as well.
Yes.
Okay.
And we also make the we had a meeting with Lula in which Brazil came and said, we support Malaysia's application for BRICS membership. So we are now moving beyond observer to actually putting in an application.
Yes.
Whereas we had been very cautious before. Only Indonesia, the I is India, now there is another I in there, and that's Indonesia. The biggest country of ASEAN is a member. And in a way, that makes it easier for Malaysia to justify why it's also going in. I'm not taking sides with the R and the C, but I am sat there with my ASEAN colleague.
Okay.
And Thailand has joined in the fun. Thailand also putting in an application.
Everyone wants to join the party. But do you think that that might tip or slightly sour or dampen enthusiasm in Washington? Because again, President Donald Trump has said before, any countries being seen to be aligned with non-American interests might be punished or penalized or seen to be unfavorable to this administration.
Well, but we are not computing to the BRICS either, because we just expanded to include a very neutral a country, Timor-Leste.
Ah.
So, at Timor-Leste, actually, it's a very good candidate in that we show that we are truly inclusive in the sense that it's not entirely based on win-win. In other words, there has to be reciprocity before I include you in my club. The truth is, Timor-Leste is a very poor country and below the average ASEAN country in economic development and other dimensions of progress. I think it is a case of where ASEAN will extend a helping hand to Timor-Leste.
Yeah.
But that, at the same time, increase the size of the club, which also increase our bargaining power. But more importantly, this expansion, I think, will be the first phase of expansion, because there are at least 4 other countries that have indicated strong interest to change, to enter the club.
Okay, this is interesting.
And some of these potential members give us the right color of truly being neutral. We are not just blindly BRICS because it's dominated by Russia and China. Because one country that is seriously interested is Chile.
Wow.
I think that is a great gesture. It is a trans-Pacific partnership. And it is not so big that it will swamp us over with its export of goods and so forth. And it is in the Americas and a friend of the United States. So we are friends with countries in that sphere of influence as well. So ASEAN, there are other potential new members, and they have indicated strong interest that they want to join, like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. That means we reach into the Indian Ocean beyond Myanmar to these two. But I think we'll do that at some point, but then right now, we should reach across the Pacific and get in the Chileans.
Wow.
Now, at least Philippines will not feel being the only Spanish heritage country, in a place that's so Anglo and Dutch dominated, French, and now we got the Spanish element that is strengthened.
Amazing.
And furthermore, it has got a very good, very strong sectors in agriculture. I think that would be, if I have my preference, among these members that are lining up to join, I would stand out and say, Chile, you're very high on the list.
Excellent. Did you see anything else in the ASEAN summit that you thought really spoke to you? That this was, I have to say, this was the biggest ASEAN summit that Malaysia has hosted. And the ability of the chair of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim to have brought all these global big powers into the room for the summit was really quite masterful in a sense. So what did that say to you about ASEAN's role in its ability to hopefully be inclusive in the region, but also in what is a changing world, in shifting global powers, shifting multipolar world, essentially?
Yes. I think one of the development that was not given much attention was the setting up of a, that is track 1, track 2, right?
Yeah.
Track 2 is government, track 1 is government, track 2 is civil society, interactions.
Tanks, yeah.
There is a formation of a 1.5. The 1.5 is a geo-economic group that the two of the most active members in this geo-economic
task force. Yes, that's right.
Is Deputy Minister Liu Jintong and former Trade Minister of Indonesia, Mari Pangkestu. That particular, they have done a report, and I think basically it spells out the geostrategic position of ASEAN, stating in quite clear terms, we are friends to all, and not only friends to all, we actually have a strategy underpinning how we would engage them, the two sides, and show that we are out to promote peace between the two of them. But the truth is, we're really not able to promote balance between the two of them. They have to balance themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we, being united and big and having a commitment to, we will not take sides. ASEAN, as they say, is incoherent because we each have different degrees of affiliation with either the US or with China.
Yes, it's not uniform, for sure.
That we certainly have different degrees of assessment of who are our more in line with our interests, our values, right? Then we are often accused of being ineffective. Incoherent for sure, ineffective. Look at the kind of things we have not been able to bring peace to Myanmar.
Myanmar, absolutely, yes.
But that is really not effectiveness, because the only kind of peace deal that works would have to be Myanmar initiated and Myanmar owned. How could an outsider come in and say, this is the peace term, like what the Americans have done in Gaza? But even then, it was not even-handed. The Israelis certainly got caught up. Now, let me get back to the whole thing. Is that we now have a clear statement of, despite being coherent and effective, we are indispensable to maintaining peace, keeping ourselves from being run over by both sides of the road, by staying together, by staying big.
I was just going to say, coming back to the wonderful analogy that you had in the beginning, was now the middle of the road, that little buffer zone you talked about, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and maybe with kind of collective economic collaboration within the region, it might get safer in that little buffer zone of ours.
Well, that means that staying in the center of the road, we are big enough that whoever bang to us will have his tires blown up.
Well, at least they can see us. Prof Woo, thank you so much for helping us unpack all the things that went down at the ASEAN Summit, getting real about the US, China, and everything everywhere in between, which includes what happened at the KL Convention Center. That's all for this episode of Woo Says. We will be back with another episode on the ASEAN Summit very soon. I'll see you in that episode. Bye, folks.